What's good, y'all? And welcome to another preseason preview video. As you guys can tell by the title, thumbnail, and my shirt here, in this video we're going to be going over the Indiana Pacers. Don't mind that this shirt is super big on me. I got it when I went to Indiana to watch the Knicks versus them in the playoffs, so I figured I might as well rep them for the video. But basically what I'm going to be doing in these videos is going through each and every team and doing an overview of their offseason, a preview into what to expect for this next coming season, and just all around talk in depth about a team for a full video. But with all that being said, I want to leave a reminder here to subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. Leave a like on this video, and let's get into the additions the Pacers brought in this offseason. The Pacers had a pretty quiet offseason, but one notable move they made was bringing in former second overall pick James Wiseman. He's still trying to find his footing in the NBA, but he comes to Indiana on a 2-year deal. The Pacers' main focus this offseason was pretty much bringing back the guys that were already on the roster, not really bringing in new guys. That's why James Wiseman is the big headline new addition here. But realistically, the biggest moves that the Pacers made this offseason were signing Pascal to his new 4-year deal, re-signing Obi Toppin out of restricted free agency for another 4 years. They extended Andrew Nembhard as well. They really had a main focus of bringing back their core of guys that got them to the Eastern Conference Finals last offseason. So when it came down to free agents that weren't already on the team, they really didn't have too much money to go out there and offer. Bringing in James Wiseman, though, on a small 2-year deal, I kind of like for them. It's a low-risk, high-reward type of move. I do think that he can come in and compete for the backup center spot. I don't think that he will just automatically be penciled into that. But if an injury happens or, just guys not playing to the level that they need to be, I could see James Wiseman stepping in and giving them a few minutes off the bench, rebounding, running to the rim. He was never able to really find his footing in that Warrior system. He gets traded to Detroit and there's not much structure there. So I do have high hopes that this will be the best fit for him out of all the teams he's been on in the NBA. He's super athletic. He was the second overall pick for a reason. He's very skilled at the big man position. Like I said, though, I think his ceiling on this roster could be backup center minutes, and that's a if. Right now, I think he's the third string guy, and it's just kind of gonna be there for the vibes. So now that we looked at who the Pacers brought in, let's take a look at the guys that they lost this offseason. As mentioned before, the Pacers really made it a priority to bring back their core guys, so they really didn't lose too many people. The only guy that played notable minutes last season that is not on the roster anymore is Jalen Smith, who signed a new deal with the Chicago Bulls. If I'm a Pacers fan and the biggest name that we lost this offseason was Jalen Smith, I am super happy with that. No disrespect to Jalen Smith, great player and everything, but he didn't play in the playoffs really. He was out of the rotation towards the end of the season and then into the playoffs. They're not really going to be missing him as they have Miles Turner and Isaiah Jackson still on the team. I mentioned their new addition of James Wiseman to replace that third string center right there. They really won't be missing Jalen Smith too much. And I think it makes sense that they moved on to him. He is very talented, a great offensive center in the NBA. But the Pacers already have loads of offense on this roster. They have that pretty much covered. So in my mind, it makes a little bit more sense on why in the playoffs we saw them shift gears to an Isaiah Jackson as the backup center to give a little bit more energy, rebounding, defense, all of those things. They didn't need offense. You can get Tyrese Halliburton to get you some shots. You can get Pascal Siakam to get you some shots. You don't need Jalen Smith to really be going to work in the post or from beyond the arc. Well, as you guys see, the Pacers didn't really have too many personnel changes, so it shouldn't come as much of a shock what you're about to see, but let's take a look at the potential rotation for the Pacers this coming season. The Pacers are keeping their starting lineup that they had all the way into the conference finals. Of course, you have Tyrese Halliburton running the show at point guard alongside Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith, Pascal Siakam, and Miles Turner. And when you look at the bench unit, they have just as much talent with TJ McConnell, Benedict Mathurin, Jarris Walker, Obi Toppin, and Isaiah Jackson. Like I mentioned before, it seems very obvious that the Pacers wanted to bring back everyone that was involved in getting them to the Eastern Conference Finals this last playoffs. And it makes sense if you think about it. Realistically, that roster right there only had half a season together. They only traded for Pascal at the trade deadline. Even when they brought him in, though, Tyrese Halliburton was in and out of lineups dealing with his lingering hamstring injury. They lost Benedict Mathurin towards the end of the season as well to a season-ending injury. And now this season, they'll have a full off-season and regular season with Pascal on the roster. Like I said, Tyrese Halliburton, he should be fully healthy again. Same thing with Benedict Mathurin. So I am very interested to see what what a fully healthy and coherent Pacers team looks like throughout the entirety of a regular season. And I'm not entirely sure what the consensus of the Pacers is so far, you know, what a average NBA fan thinks of them, but I feel like they should be very, very good in the regular season at least. I feel like they're built to have a great regular season. They just have so much talent on this roster that if a guy goes down and misses a few games, they can easily just slot the next guy up. And it shouldn't really deal with too much, like it shouldn't hurt them too much. Obviously, when you're talking about your star players, that's going to hurt any team. But they still have so much depth on this roster that I think it could work out. If Tyrese needs to miss a few games, we've seen TJ McConnell step up and play amazingly when he needs to. Pascal Siakam, if he goes down, Obi Toppin can slide in. Jarris Walker, who could play some power forward minutes. They just have a lot of different bodies on this roster that can produce. A key example of this surplus of talent for the Pacers is Ben Sheppard. He was a super important piece coming off their bench for their playoff run, giving them great shooting off the bench. He wasn't on that graphic when I just showed that. I swapped him out for Jarris Walker. I could see either one of these guys getting minutes because they both deserve minutes. They are both rotational players in the NBA. But, you know, there's only so much you could do. I know a lot of Pacers fans have been begging Rick Carlisle to give Jarris Walker consistent rotational minutes. And I think he definitely deserves it. But to cut the Pacers a little bit of slack, play some devil's advocate here, their plans for the future definitely changed drastically from when they drafted Jarris Walker to now. When they drafted Jarris, they didn't really have many power forwards on the roster. They had Obi Toppin, who they traded for from the Knicks, who was coming off of a down season, so they were taking a little bit of a flyer on him. They had Jalen Smith there, who could play some power forward / center minutes, but they didn't really have anyone solidified there. So drafting Jarris Walker makes sense. You kind of have the minutes carved out for him there. But when we fast forward to present day, obviously they traded for Pascal Siakam, who was an all-star caliber player at that power forward position. That then knocks Obi down, then knocks Jarris down, and now he's kind of left in like no man's land here. But at the same time, they used the 8th overall pick on Jarris Walker. They should want to have him in the rotation and have him playing a part to this team's success. And I think he could. I think he can play some oversized small forward with his versatility on the defensive end. You know, it gives them a big wing defender that they really don't have too many of on this roster. So I think that gives him just alone something unique that not a lot of other players can bring to the table. The one thing would be the spacing issue. You know, his jump shot, he's shown promise to be able to shoot, and in this summer league, he's looked pretty well. But he hasn't shown volume in that shooting, and when you compare him to Ben Sheppard is by far the better shooter. So it depends on which direction you really want to look at. But if I'm the Pacers organization, if I'm Rick Carlisle, I'm looking to play the 8th overall pick in Jarris Walker. Now that we've looked over the roster and kind of have an idea of what to expect, let's take a look at the strengths for this roster. And as I'm sure all of you guys predicted, the strength for this Pacers team is definitely their offense and how many players they have that can score the ball. As you can see here, last season they had 7 players averaging over 10 points per game. I put Andrew Nembhard on there too because he's just below at 9 points per game, and when you look at his playoff numbers, he averaged 15 points per game, so he's definitely a scorer also. I mentioned before the great depth that this Pacers team has, but I think those numbers are more a testament to 2 guys. Rick Carlisle and the system he put in place, and Tyrese Halliburton, who is running that system to perfection. I want to give credit to Rick Carlisle because it really seems that he went into this team and said, all right, Tyrese Halliburton, these are the strengths that we're focusing on. This is what you're good at. Now let me maximize that so the whole team can play around those strengths. One of those strengths, of course, is Tyrese's incredible playmaking. He is one of the best playmakers in the NBA. I believe he led the league in assists last season. If he didn't, he was at least top 3. Truly one of the best playmakers, can make any pass at any moment, knows exactly how to draw the defense in, make the right pass every single time. Love watching him play. But that's the obvious one, of course. The 2 other traits that I think Rick Carlisle does a great job of maximizing out of Tyrese is the way he plays so freely with the ball. Like Tyrese, when he's out there, he looks like he's having fun. No stress at all, just, you know, dribbling through, getting to the paint, making flashy passes. Like he just plays with some fluidity and some freeness that not a lot of players in the NBA do, and I think Rick Carlisle does a great job really making it so Tyrese is comfortable exerting that and playing in that style, and I think it shows when you look at how the Pacers run their offense. And the other thing is Tyrese's ability to manage the pace of the game. The Pacers, they love to run fast. When I was watching them against my Knicks in the playoffs, there were times where the Knicks would score a basket and they would grab the ball out the rim, inbound it quick, and shoot ahead pass like it was off the rebound. Like they would just start the fast break off misses, off makes, push, push, push. But there would also be times where they kind of slow it down in the half court, give Tyrese the ball, and let him play make from there. Let him get to the lane, kick it out, then it's just swing, swing, pass, find the open man. And then when you surround it with the offensive talent, there's guys that just kind of fit like puzzle pieces. Obi Toppin is one of the best transition players in the NBA since he's really gotten to the league. So pairing him alongside with one of the best pace players, it makes sense. You know, it's a perfect fit like that. Aaron Nesmith, his three-point shot skyrocketed this season, was great, one of the best 3-and-D players in there. It makes sense to spread the floor like that. Miles Turner as a stretch kind of do-it-all center down there on the offensive end makes sense to fit in this system. You know, I want to really applaud Rick Carlisle for putting this system in place, and applaud the Pacers for managing to get this much offensive talent on one roster. You can't just focus on the good though, so let's take a look at one of the weaknesses that I could see this Pacers team having this season. Here you can see the shot distribution from the Pacers' top 8 players from last season. As you see, there are 3 clear tiers. There's your top 2 players, which are Pascal and Tyrese. Then you have your secondary scorers right there of Miles Turner and Benedict Mathurin, and then below that you have your tertiary guys or your role players. Now I know what you could be thinking right here, and you could be saying, you were just talking about how it's such a big strength that the Pacers have so many players that can score the ball. Now when you look at your weaknesses, you're talking about shot distribution. That doesn't make sense. Hear me out on this. For lack of a better term, I'm saying the Pacers' weakness is they do not have a go-to scorer. Now, again, hear me out. When you watch the Pacers versus the Celtics series in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Pacers played very, very well against the Celtics, regardless of the fact that it ended up being a sweep. They had fourth quarter leads in 3 out of the 4 games that they lost to the Boston Celtics. And when you watch those games, if we're keeping it a buck, they blew them in the fourth quarter. Now, to be fair, Hallie did not play in 2 of those games versus Celtics, but when you watch them, you could tell their offense didn't really look good, or didn't look championship level, which is, of course, what everyone's goal is in the NBA. And when you look at their top players, you have Tyrese Halliburton, who is a pass-first guy. I'm not saying that in a negative connotation. You guys can see right here, I have a poster of LeBron James, my favorite player of all time. The amount of times that people used to criticize him for making the right basketball play, shot clock going down, teams would double, triple him, whatever. Open guy in the corner, he'd pass it for the game winner. He'd live with whatever happened, make or miss. That is the correct basketball play. Tyrese Halliburton is going to be looking for those passes, which a lot of the times are the correct basketball play. That doesn't change the fact that he wouldn't be a go-to scorer like that. Then when you look at Pascal Siakam, he definitely is a score-first guy, and I think that is a big reason of why they brought him in. But when you compare Pascal to some of the other top teams in the East and their go-to scorers, number 1 scoring options there, for Boston, you have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. You can even argue they have 2 go-to scorers like that. Pascal Siakam does not touch either of those guys. When you look at the Knicks, they have Jalen Brunson. Pascal Siakam definitely tier below Jalen Brunson. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, you may be able to throw in that too. You see that there's like kind of tiers or levels to this. Like I said, I think the Pacers could be a contending team and a contending level team. I'm pretty high on them. So when you compare them to the other contending teams, though, they really don't have that one guy. In a perfect world for a championship level team, Pascal Siakam would be your secondary scoring option and your 3rd best player. Right now, he's their 1st scoring option and their 2nd best player. So I definitely think they need just one more guy. But there's ways to fix this weakness. Maybe it's someone else on the team that's going to take a jump. I am pretty high on Andrew Nembhard. I think he's a sneaky, most improved player option there. So if he can add an extra scoring punch to it, maybe he can help mitigate some of these issues. Tyrese Halliburton, if he becomes a little bit more aggressive when it comes to these fourth quarters, looking for his shot and hunting those shots, maybe that could fix the issue as well. Just right now, I'm saying that's their biggest weakness, and honestly, it's not a bad weakness to have. And now it is time for the fan segment, and for this one, I have the biggest Pacers fan that I know. My boy Chase is out here. Chase, thank you for joining, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I'm glad to be here.
Of course, if you guys don't already follow Chase on Twitter, it's right in the description below. If you're a Pacers fan or an NBA fan for that matter, make sure you follow him on Twitter. A lot of good tweets there. But we might as well just get right into it, Chase. The Pacers haven't had a very loud offseason. It's been, little moves here and there. But I'm interested to see what has been your personal favorite so far throughout the offseason.
I gotta say the Nembhard extension, man. I was high on Nembhard when he was at Florida, and then when he went to Gonzaga, when we drafted him, I thought he was gonna be a really, really good NBA player. 10-year vet, at least. I was really high on him. And then throughout his NBA career, he's done nothing but prove me right.
Yes.
Had a really strong rookie season, had a very strong postseason. Even if you take out the 2 games he had without Tyrese Halliburton, he was still very productive. Had that game winner against New York.
You don't got to bring that one up. I know about that one.
But he was very pleasant throughout the whole season. I think he's probably the perfect backcourt partner with Tyrese right now. And I think he's kind of just solidified that starting 2 spot.
Yeah, I really think you guys got him on a good value contract there, making less than $20 million for those 3 years. I do also really like his pairing alongside with Tyrese, gives, that dynamic backcourt there. And I think he could be primed to have a most improved level season this coming up season. So the fact that you guys got him locked up before he could potentially break out, I really like that for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's going to have a much larger role offensively next year.
For sure. The door is open for him right there. Now for this next question, I'm interested to see what you're saying here. Who do you think is the most underrated player on the Pacers right now going into the season?
Okay, so I have 2 separate answers. So I have one that I think is generally underrated by Pacers fans, and then one that is underrated by non-Pacers fans. So the one for Pacers fans, I think, is Benedict Mathurin. After we traded Buddy Hield to the 76ers, he had that full-on 6-man responsibility, scoring punch off the bench, and he was thriving in that role. I think post trade deadline, he was averaging about 17, 18 points per game on some pretty solid efficiency. And then he tore his labrum in his right shoulder against Dallas early March. And he was out for the whole playoff run. I feel like a lot of Pacers fans kind of forgot how good he was, for our team, for our bench. And I'm excited to see what he does in year 3. I know he has a fire lit in him. He takes social media critique very personally. He said it multiple times in interviews, and he likes bookmarking tweets. So I think he's ready to break out this season.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Benedict Mathurin has, because we saw, obviously, you guys made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals without him, missing a 18-point per game score, like you just said. That's going to be a big addition to this roster right there. And then you said you had another one you wanted to mention?
Yeah, for kind of like the general NBA fan, I feel like a lot of people are writing off how good Halliburton is, because he had that magnificent start to the season. Some people may think it was a quote unquote insanity run or just a hot streak, but I think it's legit. I don't think he's gonna average 28 and 13 in one season, but I think he can realistically get 25 and 11. I think that's very within the realm of possibility. He's very efficient. I mean, he shot 40% from 3 the first 3.5 seasons of his career. He just had 1 down half.
He's definitely one of the top point guards in the league, and I feel like a lot of people kind of just ran with the fact that they were saying he was scared to score and doesn't have the fire in him or whatever. I feel like people kind of ran with that a little too much. Saying that he just looks to pass and everything. He is, like you said, a great shooter, great scorer. He does have to be a little bit more aggressive. I think we could both probably agree on that one. But if he finds that aggression, then, the sky is really the limit for him.
Yeah, for sure. There was 2 or 3 games, I'd say, in the playoffs where he probably needed to be more aggressive scoring-wise. Game 1 against the Knicks, I think he only shot 6 times. Next game, he had 34. So he has that ability to go out there and give you 30 plus on any given night. It's just he has to have the aggression to do it on a night-to-night basis. He's really efficient on all areas of the court. So I think just getting that consistent aggression is probably just his biggest weakness.
And lastly, before I get you out of here, Chase, what are your expectations for the Pacers? Obviously, they had that great playoff run all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. They set the bar up high. I'm wondering, what are you expecting for them this coming season?
They did. They set the bar high, which I do have a hot take. I think we would have beat the Bucks regardless. I don't think we would have beat the Knicks if they were fully healthy. So I think my expectation, I think we're going to be a really good regular season team. So I'd say about 50 wins minimum should be a second round appearance. like at the minimum, because our plan that we had was make the conference finals in 3 years. We did it in year one. So I don't think the expectation is going to change internally. So I don't think I'm going to change my expectation.
Yeah, I definitely think that is in the realm of possibility for you guys. Like I said, the bar was set extremely high. So hopefully they can still, stay afloat there with those expectations now on the team. But I think it's going to be a very good season coming there for Indiana. Chase, I want to thank you again for coming on here. Like I said, guys, if you're not already following Chase, it's right in the description. Follow him on Twitter, one of my favorite follows. Yeah, thank you, Chase.
Yeah, not a problem, man.
Now it is time for the ceiling, the floor, and my expectations for this Pacer team. Like I said, I might be a little bit higher on this Pacer team than some others, but I think at their ceiling, they could be a 4 seed out east. I'm kind of convincing myself to give them the 3 seed, but I'm going to lock it in at the 4 seed right now for their ceiling. I think that when you look at the shape of the Eastern Conference and how it's kind of shaking out right now, you have your top tier contenders of Boston, New York, Philly. You can maybe slide Milwaukee in there too. When you look at the tier right below that, though, I think the Pacers are the top of that tier right there. Above teams like Cleveland or Orlando or Miami, I would have the Pacers above those teams at that 4 seed spot. Then when you look at the floor for the Pacers, I could see them being as low as the 8th seed out east. The amount of parity in the NBA right now is at an all-time high, if you ask me. So when you're talking about those teams, I would take the Pacers over like a Cleveland or an Orlando or Miami. I can also see a world where they are all above Indiana, and Indiana slots all the way down to that 8th seed. I do think that is by far the lowest they could go, though. I'm pretty confident in having my top 8 from the East and then everyone else. But if I had to set my expectations for the Pacers, I would put them at the 5th seed. I think they would be competitive in the first round. They could maybe win it, but more than likely, they'd probably be a tough first round exit. What do you guys think, though? Where do you expect the Pacers to finish off in the standings this season? Let me know down in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those so you keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.